And I've auditioned for a lot and haven't got a lot. And then Gran Torino came around where he was talking to me. It was like this little role.
Consider auditioning for every film your father made and being rejected. Scott Eastwood's truth. Scott didn't hear from Clint when he directed American Sniper. Scott survived by parking cars and mixing drinks as his father won Oscars. He earned more bartending than acting. Hollywood burned him so much at 35 that he pondered becoming a firefighter. The most shocking part isn't his job struggles. He finally stood up to his father. Scott Clinton Reeves was born in Monterey, California, on March 21, 1986. Not much was said about his birth. Not even his father admitted it. Clint Eastwood. Clint was already famous, directing and starring in Pale Rider. Despite his red carpet success, Scott's life began in the shadows of a controversy. His mother, Jocelyn Reeves, was a flight attendant. She met Clint on one of his frequent mid-1980s excursions. Clint then had a 3-year affair with Sandra Locke, an actress. Locke was unaware of his double existence. A heated lawsuit years later revealed Scott and his younger sister, Catherine, to her, who thought they were exclusive. Scott's birth certificate didn't list Eastwood. He was listed as Scott Clinton Reeves to conceal the affair. Catherine was born 1988. Once the secret was too long, it couldn't be kept forever. Clint didn't mention them or raise them. Clint had been mayor of Carmel by the Sea, where Scott grew up. The boy growing up there wasn't famous. Scott lived in a different world than his father, who made $15 million per film in the 1990s. Jocelyn transferred them to Hawaii at 10. Not merely a change of scenery. The goal was to put thousands of miles between Scott and the Eastwood spotlight. In modest surroundings, Scott lived a life his classmates never questioned. They were unaware of his Hollywood father. Clint mostly stayed out of sight and reach. Scott lived on Jocelyn's flight attendant wages while Clint made millions with hit movies and new properties. Construction work was his teen employment. Waiting tables. He attended Loyola Marymount University without a trust fund. Paid his own way. Despite studying communications, he took acting classes, auditioned for small roles, and used his birth name, Scott Reeves. He didn't seek favors. He refused Clint's aid. The rejection came anyhow. Scott later claimed that he auditioned for almost all of his father's films and was rejected. Clint denied aid. He didn't cast Scott in prominent roles, even though he directed American Sniper, which made over $547 million and had 6 Oscar nominations. Scott only wanted one shot. He didn't understand. Simple was Clint's mindset. No favors or handouts. You merit it. That may seem admirable, but Scott spent years making low-budget films, parking cars, and building houses while his father won Oscars. His early parts were barely noticeable. Scott appeared briefly as Private Roberto Lunsford in Clint's 2006 film Flags of Our Fathers. Credited as Scott Reeves. No one realized he was Clint's son. He desired that. The expense was substantial. He missed attention, headlines, and momentum. He disappeared in Pride and Player 5150 credits. Not only independent films. Some went directly to video. Others played only a few theaters. He was in a professional rut, working hard but not getting far. His familial situation was difficult. Clint Eastwood had 8 kids with 6 women. Scott fit into that puzzle. Lori, born in 1954 and given up for adoption. Kimber, born in 1964 to a stunt woman. Kyle and Allison, born during Clint's marriage to Maggie Johnson. Francesca, born in 1993 with Francis Fisher, and Morgan were his half-siblings. Born 1996 to Dina Ruiz, newscaster. Some of these kids were rich. People like Scott and Catherine didn't. Some met later in life. Family reunions were awkward. Hidden resentment simmered. Scott suffered in Hawaii as a teenager. He acted out. He was suspended for fighting. He then admitted to rage difficulties. He knew his father but couldn't say. I couldn't question why he was gone. No one understood why he felt important and invisible. After moving to California in 2000, he attended Carmel High. Slowly, the truth emerged. Classmates treated him royally. Others mocked him. He pondered keeping Reeves permanently to avoid comparisons. College was his last hiding place. He still rejected Clint's power. Applied for financial aid. His hours were long. He auditioned for low-paying jobs. Then something changed. Scott appeared in Invictus in 2009. This was another Clint Eastwood film, but Scott used his true surname. The film was about doing well under pressure, fighting to be taken seriously. Scott did precisely that. Young Scott Eastwood risked a lot at 26. He signed for 3 horror films. His role in Texas Chainsaw 3D would have locked him into a trilogy, and nobody knew his real name. He remained Scott Reeves, to escape being Clint Eastwood's son. August 2011 saw filming in Shreveport, Louisiana. The initial Texas Chainsaw atrocity was unknown to Scott. Even though he'd just seen the Jessica Biel adaptation, he entered one of horror's most famous franchises. The 7th picture was marketed as a direct sequel to the 1974 original. A major tipping point followed. The next year, in 2014, Scott joined Brad Pitt's grim World War II picture Fury. Not a minor role. He played tank crew newcomer Sergeant Miles. It won the National Board of Review's Best Ensemble Award. Eastwood, still trying to establish he wasn't riding on a renowned surname, was now standing with Pitt, Shia LaBeouf, and John Bernthal. Official industry acknowledgement. Not just for showing up. Scott had to operate 1940 Sherman tanks and undergo rigorous military training. This was intense, physical, and emotional. It paid off. Critics finally called him a true actor, not simply Clint's kid. A year later in 2015, Scott unexpectedly entered romance. In Nicholas Sparks' The Longest Ride, he played a bull rider who falls in love. Classic Sparks, slow flames, massive emotions, hard decisions. However, this is wild. Scott rode bulls himself. That year saw Marvel stars and blockbusters. Still, Scott led. He was a Choice Movie Breakout star nominee. Now studios saw him differently. Scott surprised everyone again when they thought they understood him. He appeared in Taylor Swift's Wildest Dreams music video later that year. He was the main love interest in a dreamy 1950s African film within a film. One of Swift's most sensual and cinematic videos, directed by Joseph Kahn. The outcry and hot scenes were unexpected. Industry insiders advised him against it. His serious acting credibility could be ruined. Scott tried anyhow. The video debuted at the 2015 MTV VMAs pre-show on August 31st. Within hours, millions viewed it. It was also twisty. All funds went to wildlife conservation. Scott Eastwood hid a devastating secret for almost 3 years. He ultimately confessed to GQ Australia in 2017. His girlfriend Jewel Brangman perished in a 2014 vehicle accident. Her age was 26. It wasn't serious. Most people leave such accidents. Jewel didn't. She died instantly, and Scott never mentioned it. Not even to her family or the public. He remained mute until that interview. Jewel hired a 2001 Honda Civic to drive from San Diego to Los Angeles. She rear-ended another car in a minor chain reaction incident on the way. Nothing seemed fatal. Although no one was hurt, Jewel's automobile carried a frightening secret. The airbag was recalled in 2009. The rental company never fixed it. Airbag deployment failed to save her. It killed her. The substances inside were unstable. The metal canister detonated. Shrapnel pierced her neck. Scott stated it was intense enough to break her spine. Just that injury. One flying metal fragment killed her. Takata made the airbag. Their airbags were in 24 million U.S. autos. The largest American auto recall ever occurred. For Jewel, the recall was too late. She contributed to the fallout. Her father, Alexander Brangman, was devastated. The father relocated across the nation to be with his daughter, his sole child, his best friend. The last Father's Day card she gave him indicated she'd always be his little daughter. 3 months later, she left. Scott was heartbroken. He stated that he had lost friends, but never a loved one. He had never lost a partner. That altered him. He said dating was harder. Trusting people became tougher. He kept Jewel's father in the dark for years. He stated, "I still haven't found the perfect words," in 2017. Dad pleaded for Jewel's responses. He wanted the world to know his affection for her. Scott remained mute. After speaking, it was evident. He wasn't well. He remained broken. Scott's pain went beyond the accident. It came from his inaction. He never contacted or called. That guilt was his. He finally opened out about more than grief. It involved humiliation, survivor's remorse, terror, and emotional paralysis. It was hard for him to confront a father who had lost everything. Before the heartbreak, Scott Eastwood had another mentor, Paul Walker. Not just a co-worker, the Fast and Furious star. He was a mentor, buddy, and big brother. He taught Scott Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, which helped him emotionally. Around 2007, Paul introduced Scott to the sport. It wasn't only workout for Paul. It was lifestyle. He studied under Ricardo, Franginia, Miller, and Ron Shiraki. He converted parts of his Hawaii home into a training center. So much he adored it. Paul died in 2013 with a brown belt. He hoped to get his black belt shortly. Never succeeded. His professors gave it to him posthumously 2 weeks after his death. Scott considered Paul's gift. It wasn't casual training. He accepted. He said it taught him humility, ego control, and physical and mental pain management. He said you'll strangle some people and some will choke you, regardless of who you are. The lesson: no fame, no Hollywood last name or biceps could defend you on the mat. You earned every inch. This was crucial for Scott, who grew up in Clint Eastwood's shadow. He needed an expectation-free experience. Jiu-jitsu did. Respecting his bounds was learned. It allowed him to fail securely. He identified with it. Joe Rogan revealed why men find jiu-jitsu powerful. He claimed it helps individuals unleash strong emotions, cease pretending, and face fear and anger without violence. Humbles you. Calms you. It did that for Scott. Jiu-jitsu became more than workout after Jules' death. Therapy ensued. Scott said it kept him grounded and moving. Despite his reluctance, he practiced daily. He gained mental and physical strength from that discipline. Strangely, Paul Walker saved Scott Eastwood twice, by exposing him to the sport and by teaching him the tools to survive after Jules. Paul's death was tragic, yet his legacy endured. Scott carried that. He honored his friend every time he went on the mat. Every time he stood, he honored Jules. Scott Eastwood wanted to be more than a father-son actor. He wanted to be unique. He joined the Fast and the Furious in 2017, opening up that road. He played Little Nobody, a sharp-suited government agent. The part was written to replace Paul Walker. Eastwood didn't imitate him. Instead, he provided charm, humor, and grit. The character was honorable, enjoyed fast vehicles, and disagreed with the crew sufficiently to earn respect. The franchise made Eastwood famous globally with over $6 billion earned. Not simply a cameo. He proved he could manage major action and stars by finding Charlize Theron's villain, Cypher. It wasn't unique. Eastwood grew bigger in 2018. He co-led Pacific Rim Uprising, filling the previous film's huge shoes. The film had robots, monsters, explosions, and Eastwood. Though critics weren't impressed, the picture made $291 million. And Eastwood, he stood tall on green screens, CGI, and stunts. He passed the global blockbuster test. In 2019, he changed course. The Outpost was quiet, raw, intense, and achingly real. Eastwood portrayed a soldier in a deadly Afghanistan war battle, not a heroic fantasy. It was chaotic, scary, and emotional. Critics adored it. Rotten Tomatoes rated it 93%. A veteran claimed it felt real. One critic believed Eastwood sounded like a youthful Clint when he answered, "No, not today." He showed more than his fighting skills this time. He showed he could act. He rejoined Fast X in 2023. Fans missed him in F9, but he returned strong. After Mr. Nobody left, Tiny Nobody took over. Eastwood held his own against Vin Diesel, Jason Momoa, and Brie Larson. The film hinted at Eastwood's character's rise in future stories. In an ever-changing franchise, he stayed relevant. His biggest leap came in 2025. Alarum was no ordinary action film. A 95-minute fight with Sylvester Stallone. Michael Polish directed and Lionsgate distributed the drama about two ex-spies seeking to live peacefully. A plane crash, a mysterious hard drive, and a violent chase dragged them back into pandemonium. Stallone gripped. Fire came from Eastwood. Director, watching them together was like a master lesson. Eastwood survived the scene and mirrored Stallone's moves. It went beyond a film. It felt like action legends were passing the mantle. Eastwood was also making something while the cameras rolled. Made here. Entrepreneur Dane Chapin launched it in 2019. Not just another celebrity apparel brand. A patriotic purpose. Eastwood thought American-made mattered. Their enterprise started simple. U.S.-made t-shirts, socks, and boxers. Neither outsourced nor cheap. Genuine American labor behind every stitch. He stated industrious Americans make our brand feasible. He meant it. Eastwood was more than a spokesman. He and Chapin oversaw every shirt's fit. The idea was simple but bold. make high-quality, everyday items, and communicate their makers' stories. Each product symbolized American manufacturing's revival. Someone needed to believe in it again. September 2019 saw the brand soft launch. Supporters received early discounts on their website, but it was difficult behind the scenes. They had to redesign, improve materials, and find suppliers who shared their vision. These products were mostly created abroad. Eastwood wanted to show they could do it better at home. Fashion wasn't the focus. It was pride. Stories accompanied each product, not simply labels. It showed what America could create if someone risked. But manufactured here went beyond garments. The vision was vast. Eastwood stated their line was only starting. They intended to enter new American-made categories. Worker pride remains. Sales weren't their goal. They intended to alter buyers' perceptions. Real ideals underpin the movement. Scott Eastwood never grew up normally. Not with Clint Eastwood as dad. Not when everyone knows your last name before you know its meaning. Their most intense moment was when Scott was 16. His mistake was dreadful. His 14-year-old sister was left alone at a party. It wasn't important to him. Perhaps he wanted to have beer with friends. After discovering it, Clint didn't hold back. He grabbed Scott, threw him against the wall, and hit him in the face. It wasn't lecturing, not a warning, a brutal lesson. His throat was gripped by Clint. Never leave your sister at a party, he advised. Scott never forgot that moment. Eastwood grew up in a time when parenting meant brutal love. Scott later mentioned his dad didn't support new age parenting nonsense. You messed up at their place. Your punishment. That works. Freebies were absent. Clint didn't consider Scott's $8,000 truck purchase request. His reply was no. Scott worked. He made money. It was enough. He had to figure out the rest. And he did. Clint gave him more than survival skills. He showed him how to be punctual, work hard, and take life seriously. Scott attributes his hustler mentality to that. He had to work for his desires. Scott made a major career decision in 2022. Warner Brothers offered him 3 films. Suicide Squad involvement. Most performers dream of such an offer. Big money, big exposure. Scott didn't like it. He disliked the contract. Dad, they won't pay me real money, and there's no plot for the next picture. Clint didn't push. Just do it if it feels right, he urged. Do not if not. The end. No pressure, no big speech, just instinct. Scott left the contract. That moment was significant. Clint was more than dad. A mentor. He taught Scott that respect and instinct should guide job decisions, not celebrity or money. Their bond went beyond lessons and disputes. It also used stories. Clint is 94, one of Hollywood's last living legends. Scott knows. He attempts to get as many stories as possible. They can be wild. Sinatra or old movie set stories. Museum-worthy stories. Scott listens intently when Clint tells them because he rarely does. He informed his dad, "You're not going to be around forever," and he meant it. Scott was a kid on the Space Cowboys set. He recalls Clint flying a helicopter across the California coast with him in the seat beside him. Clint sometimes gave him the controls. That wasn't just cool. They showed Scott his father's character. He was fearless, focused, and in charge of his environment. Scott now creates his universe. His next big feature, Regretting You, is based on a best-selling Colleen Hoover novel. The film opens in theaters on October 24, 2025. Cast is stacked. Allison Williams, Dave Franco, McKenna Grace. Story is emotional. An automobile tragedy ruins a family and reveals decades of secrets. Hoover executive produces. Scott understands the Hoover fanbase is strong. He's entering a world that could explode if the film hits. But he's not done. As Robeson, he helps find a missing child abducted to the Middle East in Stolen Girl. Based on Maureen Daba's life. Kate Beckinsale portrays Mom. The Italy-shot film explores worldwide betrayal, combat zones, and unwavering parental love. Gritty, painful, and honest. His film Lucky Strike is set during the Battle of the Bulge. Rod Lurie, proprietor of The Outpost, directs. The tale is personal. The writer interviewed a war veteran at 16 for it. Survival story from a soldier's perspective. Colin Hanks and Anjanou Ellis-Taylor star. November filming begins in Bulgaria. Wind River 2. Next chapter. It follows the 2017 hit. Scott joins Martin Sinsmeyer and Jason Clarke in a strong cast. The plot involves ritualistic murders on a Native American reserve. Scott plays an FBI-hired fish and wildlife tracker. It's dark. There are layers. Tribal politics, justice, and American wilderness survival are covered. Filming is complete, but release remains uncertain. Scott Eastwood stated Hollywood was like a circus. He wasn't kidding. He described how the industry had repeatedly burned him in a 2022 interview. He was 35 and debating whether to stay. He admitted to been burned several times. Not sure I want to do this in my 40s. Not just words. His youth was unglamorous. He survived in Los Angeles and San Diego by working construction, bartending, and parking vehicles. His annual salary was $30,000 to $40,000. Shockingly, he made more mixing drinks than acting. There were times he considered quitting. Even becoming a firefighter was discussed. Those weren't fleeting thoughts. The backup plan was real. He was stressed by the emotional toll of chasing roles and the business's volatility. With his late 30s approaching, he's thinking beyond filmmaking. He desires a family, but has none. He's apprehensive about that life, especially being away from his kids all the time to work in an unsteady business. Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu grounded him unexpectedly while Hollywood emptied him. He joined because of his friend Paul Walker. They met almost a decade ago, and Walker introduced him to the sport 6 to 8 years before his terrible death. Paul was fixated. Having mats at home in Hawaii allowed him to train anytime. The influence stayed with Eastwood. Starting to train seriously transformed him. On Joe Rogan's show, he called jiu-jitsu the ultimate humbling. In Hollywood, where everyone wants prestige and validation, rolling on the mat reminded him that ego doesn't matter. You'll choke folks. People will choke you out, he continued. It's simple. It's real. It disproves your specialness. That attitude. That calm. That reality check. He explained why the best jiu-jitsu fighters are the most grounded he's met.